21 of the Simply Great Relationships podcast. We're so glad you could join us. I'm Meredith Silversmith and this is Marina, and today we're talking about how to have an awesome date night in the midst of holiday chaos.
That's a great topic. I'm really excited about this one.
Very important. So we're going to be covering what makes date night extra important around this time of year, what makes it hard to be consistent with date night during the holidays, the benefits of having a consistent date night, how to prioritize date night when you have limited time.
That's a good one.
Yep. How to focus on date night to max out the benefits, so specifics on what to do, and quick and easy date night ideas for the holiday season. So make sure you stay with us until the very end because we've got a great bonus for you and we'll tell you how to get it.
So, what makes date night extra important around this time of year specifically?
That's a good question. I think we know from previous episodes, specifically episode 19, Fight Proof Your Next Big Event, and 20, Surviving Thanksgiving, that holidays can be very triggering.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of emotionality, a lot of commitment, a lot of shuttling, transportation, who's responsible for what, who's picking up who. It's a lot. It's overwhelm, right? Things that are not so sexy.
Yeah, not much to that.
Yeah, but the thing about date night is date night offers that time to reconnect, to support each other, almost like to press refresh.
Yeah.
On all that chaos. You know, I'm a big fan of date night. I'm an even bigger fan of date night when you're dealing with something like the holidays, because that's when you extra need that refresh button.
Yeah.
When you're coasting and things are going well, like April.
Yeah.
You know, date night is great, but it's almost like the function that date night serves around this time of year has so much positive impact.
Absolutely. And the holidays can be really overwhelming. You know, there's a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure, and you really have to make sure that you're protecting that time where you and your partner can kind of duck away from all of that, have a break, decompress, reconnect. It's really, really beneficial.
Yeah. So I guess the $1 million question is kind of, why does date night tend to fall off? What makes it hard to have a consistent date night during the holidays?
Oh my gosh. I know for me and Tom, our schedules just get so much busier around the holidays between, family events, and he's got a very large family, so there's always something going on. We don't have to travel, but I think that's something you and George face around the holiday time.
Yeah. And I think with travel, there's a lot of expectation because we're both traveling to the West Coast, that we're completely immersed in 100% family time.
Yeah.
And, there's a little bit of guilt that comes with being sorry, we're going to take some time for ourselves when we're only there for such a short time. So I'd say maybe guilt plays into it a bit if you're traveling and you don't get to see your family as often because they're not local.
Sure. Yeah. And then prep time, especially if you're hosting, or even if you're not, just prepping food, prepping gifts, shopping, cleaning. There's so much extra tasks that get layered in around the holidays, so that definitely pulls on your, your free time.
There's also a lot of family and social obligations, and I almost want to put obligations in quotes because the reality is no one's holding a gun to your head, but it certainly feels that way sometimes. Yeah. A part of the overwhelm and the triggers that go with holidays is this sense of I have to, I must.
Yeah.
There's no flexibility, there's no wiggle room. So just having that kind of mentality of this is an obligation, we have to do this, is something that's kind of confining, constricting, and can stand in the way of date night, especially if you're a couple that's very routine, where Friday night is date night and all of a sudden, no, Friday night is meal at Aunt Susie's house. You're like,
what do we do?
Yeah. And that's why, like, even for really consistent couples, throwing all this other stuff into the mix can throw date night off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a bit of pressure or a supposed to belief about the holidays being very family-centric. So it's sort of like, well, this time of year you have to shift your focus to your family outside of your relationship. And, you know, everyone has a finite amount of time, so by making that shift, you're inherently losing some of your time as a couple, you know, and in your relationship. So it's bound to happen.
The other thing I think, and this is one, you know, not a lot of people kind of touch on or think about, is finances. Like, a lot of people, date night is going out for a nice dinner or a movie. Like, there's a certain budget involved with it, and around the holidays, it's like, where did all my money go?
Yeah.
You know, you have gifts. If you're hosting, that's, you know, a big financial investment. If you're just getting a cleaning lady because you don't want to clean all day, that's another financial investment. Like, I find for us, like, a lot more expenses tend to come up.
Yeah. And
I feel like that's almost like an easy, I don't want to use the word excuse, but like almost like an easy out to say, well, we're budgeting, so let's put date night on the back burner as opposed to, like, again, the have-tos. The gifts, the hosting, whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, that's a choice, right? And we're going to give you some tips later on today about ways to do a budget-friendly date night, that it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but...
Exactly, because date night is about creating a feeling, not about, you know, how much money you spend or a product necessarily, so.
Yeah. So let's talk about the benefits, because, you know, I think it's really important to know why it's so important to have a date night. You have to have motivation, right, to keep it going. So what do you think are some of the benefits of having a consistent date night?
So my biggest one is the message that it sends to your relationship. Keeping date night consistent, especially when you're in a chaotic, busy, overwhelming time, sends that message that your relationship is important and your relationship comes first, regardless of what external stuff life throws your way. And I think that is such a powerful message to internalize as a couple, like that regardless, we have this really, really great ritual of connection and this really consistent habit that enriches our relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, it does, we've talked about this before with the emotional bank account concept, that having a consistent date night buffers against external stress. And we know that the holidays tend to be a more stressful time period for everybody, so you need it even more than you would in the day-to-day. So it's really important.
Yeah, and to just kind of add on to that, it gives you an opportunity to check in. You know, like, a date night is not always rose-colored glasses. Sometimes it's just about really taking that time to focus on your relationship and using that time to check in, which is really, really important around this time, especially if you know that either for you or for your partner or both, the holidays can be a really triggering time. A specific event you've committed to can be a really triggering time. It prevents these issues from compounding, and then come February, you're like, well, that time in November or that time in December that you didn't check in with me and I was really hurting, you know? It prevents that in... you know, and helps dissolve it and address it and give that support in the moment when it's most valuable.
Yeah, definitely. That's a benefit. And I think one of, you know, some questions to open that topic up with your partner is to sit down and say, like, what's going well right now, right? Start with the positives. What's going well in our relationship? What feels good to me? What feels good to you? And then, you know, to follow up in an effort to set it up to not be critical, to say, what could I have done better to support you, right? So inviting that feedback and asking your partner to let you know what you could have done better is a really positive way to open up the discussion.
Yeah, that's a great one. date nights also create a little room for some sexy time.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this in episode 3, creating more pleasure in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Date night, I think, couples that are good with being consistent with date night are also really good at being consistent with creating intimacy, because I think a date night is a part of like that intimate repertoire in a relationship, and you don't want your intimacy to fall off.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a date night creates an opportunity to share some intimacy, to share some sexy time, in a chaotic time.
Yeah, and you can listen. You can go way back to episode 3, creating more pleasure in your relationship. It's a good one. There's a really good freebie with that one, so definitely check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes below. And we did touch on this before. The added benefit is date night creates deposits in your emotional bank account. And you always want to be making deposits, and especially keeping in mind that during times of stress, there are going to be more withdrawals.
Yeah.
So you want to buffer against that as much as possible, and this is a really simple way to do that.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that you can prepare for more withdrawals. You don't just have to go into it and say, like, we'll deal with that when it comes.
Right.
You're going into a time when there's going to be more withdrawals just because there's a lot of stuff going on. How do we prepare for that? I think strong couples are strategic, and this is a part of being strategic.
Absolutely.
Is knowing that there's going to be withdrawals. How do we counterbalance that with really meaningful deposits? So how do we prioritize date night when we're in such a time crunch?
Well, my favorite thing, scheduling, right? So scheduling it is really the first step. You have to do that. Really, it's good to do that anyway. It's hard to make something happen with consistency if you're not scheduling it and planning ahead. But especially when it's busy and it's the holiday time, you have to schedule. You have to sit down with your calendar and say, okay, when are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? How long are we going to spend? And write it down.
I feel like whatever goes on the calendar is sacred. And I think blocking out these chunks of time. Yeah. George and I have really learned to do this, especially when we're going back for the holidays to Portland or to Vancouver, like to block out chunks of time that are just George and Marina time, and they're protected. And if somebody says, "Oh, let's go do this," we say, "Sorry, we already have this planned." And an extra tip and trick for people who travel back home and it's far away and you feel like you have to be with your family, I always say, like, make reservations ahead and just say, "Sorry, we have a reservation. It took a really long time to get."
That's a good tip.
Yeah, that's our little trick that we resort to is we'll pick some places we want to check out and make all those reservations in advance, and I feel like people respect reservations.
Yeah, it's very official.
Yeah, so we do that, and that helps protect our time.
That's good.
Another one is, like, think outside the box in terms of time, right? Usually if you're used to having date night Friday night or Saturday night, that might not be realistic during this time. There might be an office party, friends party, a holiday that falls, and Friday night just might not be feasible. But, like, going for breakfast and a coffee and a walk in the park, or packing a little picnic if you're somewhere warm, or, going somewhere indoors and spending time together on a Tuesday morning if you're off, just as good. Like, a date night is not defined by Friday night.
Right.
So be flexible with time.
Yeah, absolutely. And time in that sense as when in the week are we going to do it, and also being flexible with time duration, right? How long does date night have to be? It doesn't have to be 3 hours to be a date night. Think small, short, manageable, something that's not going to be super time consuming. It's not going to be a production. Sometimes It could be as small as going to, you know, maybe it's not even a full sit-down dinner. Maybe it's lunch at Chipotle. That can be a date night. It doesn't have to be, you know, start to finish, like, a 5-course meal. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to go with that, now is not the time to overcomplicate date night.
Yeah.
Now is not where you're going to do the scavenger hunt in the city and, you know, the lunch and the play and the this and the that and the boat ride, you know, like, that is lovely. Please do that during more feasible times of the year. But now is not the time to overcomplicate. Keep it simple and focus, like, again, what's the point of date night? The point of date night is to create a feeling. The feeling of connection, the feeling of intimacy, the feeling of support. Focus on creating that feeling. Almost workshop backwards, like, what will strategically give us this feeling in the shortest, easiest time possible?
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, how do we produce the best date ever?
Right. Definitely being clear on what the intention is, and it's going to be easier to kind of create that when you're not thinking too big. That's a good tip. So, since we're working with limited time and potentially limited resources, what are the most important things to focus on to max out the benefits of date night?
So, my number one thing is you're focusing on each other.
Right.
My number one thing, my biggest rule, especially when it comes to time crunch date nights, is phones away.
Yeah.
Because the second the phone comes out, you're robbing time away from your date night. You're going into that micro rejection that we talked about.
Yeah.
I don't remember the episode, but we will put it in the show notes. But go back and listen to that episode. Those micro rejections become not so micro when you're time crunched and all of a sudden, and you've done all this planning to have a date night, and then your partner whips out a phone. So I would say my absolute concrete rule here is phones away.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think depending on how short your date night is, like, it's okay to plan a bit what you want to talk about. You know, you don't have to put this pressure on where, okay, we're having a 45-minute date night and we're going to sit there and stare at each other because we feel a bit like, okay, there's time crunch, we want to make the best out of this, what should we talk about? It's okay to plan ahead. And there are some really cool things we can use. Marina and I love this app. It's called the Love Maps app. You can download it definitely on iTunes. I don't know if it's available for Android at the moment. I think it is. I feel like one of my clients had looked into that. But basically it's a list of questions, and they're questions that deepen your knowledge and understanding of your partner's inner world. And it's really fun. So you just sort of flip through the questions and, you know, you sort of lightheartedly quiz each other. Like, who are my 3 best friends? What is my biggest struggle right now at work? Stuff like that. So that's a really light, directed way to facilitate conversation during date night.
Yeah. Another great one for people who don't love apps is Table Topics. Gives you a physical, cute little box with a lot. I want to say, like, at least maybe 100.
Wow.
Different cards with questions, same type of questions, really open-ended, facilitate nice conversation. A lot of them are, you know, like, get to know your partner. Some of them are sexy. I really like those. Another great one, if you don't want to buy an app or a Table Topics box, is New York Times had this article. I feel like this was like the most read article of ever, with the 36 questions that make you fall in love, which was like a study they did about people who were just meeting.
Oh, wow.
And if they answered these 36 questions with each other, they were likely to fall in love. But I've used it with couples. I've used it with George. Some of the questions are so lovely, and you probably haven't asked them in such a long time that just so great to go through them.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And, you know, a good use of your time during date night, as Marina referenced before, is to get it back to a little bit of sexy time. So reminiscing about the good old sexy days, right? And we talk about this in episode 10, bringing sexy back, talking about past experiences you've had, reminiscing, you know, sort of bringing those memories back to the forefront and letting them work their magic.
I also think incorporating physical touch, so like sitting close together, showing some physical affection, 6-second kiss, hugs, you know, however PG or XXX you want to make it. But, you know, focusing on sharing that physical touch, because again, like, that might be a bit by the wayside. And it also, what I find, and tell me if you see this also, like, holidays, there's a lot of hugging relatives that you haven't hugged in a while, and for some people that may be a little awkward, and it's almost like when we do that, we become a little, like, touch reclusive, like touch avoidant, and sometimes that translates into our relationship, and that's a really good thing to very consciously counteract.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, there's a lot of hugging. A lot of kissing, hello, goodbye.
Yeah.
And again, setting apart your relationship from that. This isn't just another relative that you're greeting and saying goodbye to. This is your partner. This is your, you know, your most important person. So that's important. What do you think are some good, quick and easy date night suggestions for the holidays?
So this is one from the book of Marina and George. This is our favorite day night activity. Is we love walk and wine. Yeah. We love to, you know, just set some time, have some wine, go for a nice long walk, talk, explore, especially when we're away. Like, you know, Portland and Vancouver, they change so quickly, so every time we're there, there's like 100 new things. And, so we'll like walk and explore, so we're sharing a new experience together, and it's not pressured, it's not about spending money, it's not about having dinner, it's about taking a walk, which is really nice. You know, we hold hands, we have great conversation, and it feels like a really great us time.
That's awesome.
So, walk and wine.
That sounds fun. Tom and I really like the breakfast date. We like breakfast food a lot, so that helps. You know, we're big brunchers. We're probably on the earlier end of what would be considered brunch at this point. But, yeah, just going out for breakfast, or even staying home for breakfast. You don't even have to go out, but just to set that we're going to have breakfast together, and we're going to make it a nice experience, right? So we might cook something out of the ordinary, a little more involved. We'll sit together at the table, we might play music, we'll talk. It's a really nice way to start the day in general, but especially when you set it aside as a date, it's really enjoyable.
Yep. If you exercise, you know, I find it's always like interesting to me how people are so good at staying committed to their workout routine, but maybe not so good at staying with their couples rituals and couples routines, but incorporating your partner into your workout routine. So doing a couples yoga or a couples workout class, or even just going to the gym together, and like going to the gym together, working out together, not being separate, you know, like I'll go do my Zumba class, you go lift weights, but like going through circuits together and doing some cardio together and doing some partner exercises together is kind of a fun date night. Like George and I have done it, and we've had a good time doing it, you know, doing couples stretches, a lot of touch incorporated in those.
I think that's a great thing. And then if you are under a time crunch, you're integrating date night into something that you're already going to be doing. So it's even easier. I think that's a great suggestion. So, we put together something for you this week that I think is going to be really helpful. We've created a list of our top 10 holiday date night ideas for you. So you don't even have to sit down and try to think of things. You can just pull this list, pick the ones you like, and put them into practice, because we don't want you to just listen. We want you to listen and integrate this into your relationship. So be sure to download this list. You can get it at simplygreatrelationships.com/021.
So let's talk about takeaways.
Let's talk about takeaways. Oh my goodness. My biggest takeaway, I think something I didn't think about before, is like the increased amount of touch that you're having during the holidays by saying hello and goodbye to everybody. Tom's got a big Italian family, so there's a lot of hugging and kissing a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good point to kind of clearly and consciously separate out your partner and making sure you're devoting that time to your type of touch. That's
Mm-hmm.
more intimate, more affectionate, to try to keep that separate and apart from the generic greetings that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
My big one is, nothing new, but schedule. Like you said, like, the scheduling is really important. Nobody's schedule is completely fully blocked. Like,
No.
our schedules are more like Swiss cheese, and you want to find those holes and then protect them. And really, if you take the 5 minutes to do that, those 5 minutes will pay off beyond.
Yeah.
So just knowing that tiny investment in going over your schedule can have such big reward. Like, I just love that concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my big takeaway.
Those are good ones. Oh, so that's all for today. That was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a lot. So we hope you take these tips and start using them right away. Be sure to download the bonus. We'd love for you to continue the conversation with us in our Facebook group, where we'll hook you up with tips, tricks, and live streams exclusively for our members. You can find the group at facebook.com/simplygreatrelationships. Facebook.com/groups, don't miss that part, /simplygreatrelationships, or you can click the link on our website, simplygreatrelationships.com. So good luck implementing your date night. We'd love to hear about it. And until next week,
Bye.